Welcome to our channel. In this video, an in-depth analysis of the recently concluded SCO summit in Tianjin, China, and its key takeaways is being presented. Let us delve into the deeper details. Should India trust China again? This is very often debated in the backdrop of rapprochement between these nations that led India's active participation with much buzz at the SCO summit. Very often, it is perceived as India's move in response to growing tension with the US and the Western nations. Improving the relationship between India and China is sometimes floated as an alternative to the US. This is very unlikely. There is a long-standing border dispute that very often escalates violently, as we have seen in the Galwan Valley incident and the Doklam military standoff. India and China also have significant trade rivalry and their own regional and global ambitions. India's assertion as a regional power in South Asia does not go very well with China. So, China is actively pursuing a policy to block India's growing influence on the global landscape. On the other hand, India is also engaged in limiting Chinese influence in South Asia in close association with the US and its allies through the Quad. However, the chaos, led by Trump and his renewed trade and foreign policy, has redefined bilateral relations among nations and brought about a fast change in the diplomatic landscape of the world. As credibility of the US has shattered as a reliable security and trade partners, most of the nations are busy realigning their bilateral relations with other nations and exploring alternative partners to safeguard their national interest. The recent thaw in India and China relationship may also be seen in this perspective. India's recent engagement with China, which had been a major rival not only for India but for the US too, is a spontaneous phenomenon in view of the crisis of trust arising from a massive shift in the United States' foreign policy and its priorities. Still, the question stands as to whether India can depend on China. Definitely not. There is no question of either dependency or trust. In the diplomatic arena, there are no permanent friends or foes. The equation keeps changing with changing circumstances and national priorities. History has proven this time and again. Trade relations among nations may go on irrespective of their different political view with one another or even rivalry on the political and diplomatic front. Nations seek to make some arrangement, bypassing their differences for the mutual benefit of national interest. The greatest example is the US-China trade relationship itself. China is still a top exporter and a great trade partner of the US. In the changed global scenario, wherein India allied with the US in the Quad to combat China's growing influence in Asia and in the Indian Ocean, India realized the futility of such a policy in the wake of the US attack on its trade. The situation has just reversed. Now, instead of China, India needs a fight against the US's continuous assault on its trade and economy. Quad has no relevance for India now. In the changed diplomatic dynamic, both rivals, India and China, have common challenges to counter US hegemony and to protect their trade and economy from the adverse effects of US-led trade war. Purchasing Russian oil and maintaining closer ties with Russia, for which the Trump administration keeps threatening these neighboring nations, is a root point for both India and China that brought them closure. The Chinese side first started sending signals for a new start in the bilateral relationship with India, when massive reciprocal tariff on Chinese exports was announced by the US recently, following a pause for 90 days for trade negotiations. While India adopted a cautious approach towards China's rapprochement, given unresolved border disputes and China's backing to Pakistan against India, both nations still felt the necessity to work together for a broader economic interest in the geopolitical environment in which Western nations are growing hostile to both nations equally. This is why India decided to take part in the SCO summit. As expected, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was given a red carpet welcome by the Chinese side. It was the most appropriate platform for India to have bilateral negotiations with other representatives of member states, such as Vladimir Putin, and with representatives of other Central Asian countries, such as Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Belarus, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Iran, alongside the summit, where India desires to expand its footprint. Still, no breakthrough achievement may be expected from the SCO for India. Notwithstanding, a well-crafted diplomatic approach towards China and other Eurasian countries may yield a significant result. Let us break down what India and China may expect from each other. Security and counterterrorism cooperation. Since India and Pakistan are both members of the SCO, India can push China and other members to adopt a firmer stance against cross-border terrorism emanating from Pakistan. Though it is very unlikely to happen, as China's interest lies in shielding Pakistan. Still, a generic view to condemn terrorism in all its forms can be taken by member states. It is seen that the act of terrorism in all its forms, including cross-border terrorism, is condemned in the recently concluded SCO declaration. Apart from it, India can take advantage of greater intelligence sharing on terrorism from the Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure, RATS, a wing of the SCO. Stability on borders. On the sidelines, India can press China for de-escalation along the line of actual control. Though the final resolution of the border dispute is unlikely, it is still a greater platform to take on this issue. Minor gains, such as disengagement along the LAC and military hotline talks, are possible from the bilateral meetings during the SCO summit. Economic openings. Since India runs a huge trade deficit of around $100 billion with China, it can seek greater market access for its IT services, pharma, and agricultural products to reduce the trade deficit to some extent. Further, it can also explore for connectivity project that can bypass Pakistan under the SCO settings. India can work inside the SCO with China to secure stable energy supplies from Central Asian countries like Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan. A joint venture in the field of green energy, renewables, and rare earth minerals may also be feasible to work on for both countries. By engaging with China in the SCO, India can avoid isolation in Eurasian countries and show that it is not exclusively tilted towards Western nations. It can also limit Chinese influence within the SCO by working with Russia and other Central Asian nations. Further, India may also have an opportunity to shape rules and regulations for regional security and connectivity so that they are not fully tilted to China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. What China expects from India. China wants India to remain actively engaged in the SCO so that it looks truly a pan-Eurasian platform, not only a China-Russia bloc. India's presence in the SCO may counter the West's narrative that the SCO is only a China-Russia and Pakistan hub. Thus, India's presence lends certain legitimacy to the groupings. Even as border tension persists, China values India's participation in the group as it sends a signal to the West that India still engages with China despite having aligned with the Quad and the G7. China has long promoted the Belt and Road initiatives among the SCO members. Though India strongly rejects BRI as it passes through the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, still China hopes that India will not strongly block or criticize to such connectivity declarations among the SCO members. Despite tension, India is a greater market for Chinese goods such as electronics, machinery, and telecom. China would try for the resumption of smooth trade ties and the removal of restrictions laid down by India post-2020 on Chinese investment and apps. China sees the SCO as a counterweight to the US-led Western domination, hence wants India to remain actively participating to show that India is not fully in the Western bloc. It helps Beijing in its narrative that Eurasia can manage itself without Western intervention. Engaging in such a platform provides a win-win situation for both countries. Further, India's participation in the SCO should not be seen as India's tilting fully towards China. Since there is Russia and other Eurasian nations, which also want to limit China's influence in the SCO, India can take leverage by engaging with those nations and exploring a potential market for further collaboration.